Hi everyone, how are you doing? Thank you so much for your response to episode 1. We are really enthused seeing that, and we would love to reiterate the point that we told you yesterday. Please spend time on these questions, brainstorm, and share your answers in the comments on the YouTube video so that we'll have an opportunity to give feedback on your answers. Today's question falls under the topic planning in GS3. So far, we know that in India, Planning Commission has taken a very significant role in planning for the country, right? However, after 2015, we had Niti Aayog, which brought in a different set of principles into the process of planning for economic development. This question specifically asks us in that context, how are the principles followed by Niti Aayog different from the principles followed by erstwhile Planning Commission in India? Here, there is one frequent mistake that any student can do. They might enter into explaining the organizational differences between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog, but this is not expected in the question. We are only expecting you to answer how the nature of working of Niti Aayog is different from the nature of working of Planning Commission, because the two organizations come from two different backgrounds. So the fundamental principles that separate the two organizations are different. You are expected to 1. Identify the differences between these two with respect to the fundamental principles or motives. And second part, which is not so explicitly said, is to check the suitability of Niti Aayog to present context. Fine. So we have made this huge shift from Planning Commission to Niti Aayog, and we are examining the principles which separate the two. Now, which is not explicitly said is, how is this shift, right? This shift to Niti Aayog relevant to contemporary conditions of India, and what else can be done with the organization to make it much more suitable? We know that the Planning Commission of India has so far laid down 12 5-year plans, and in the process, it has played a very crucial role in helping with economic development and also growth, which is more inclusive and at the same time modern in its nature. However, there were several reservations about the way Planning Commission has functioned, right? We know that Planning Commission has dictated the terms of finances for states, and at the same time Planning Commission, inherent to its nature of organization, it was more centralized, and it also has missed the opportunity of involving states in the process of planning. Thus, states were always seen as recipients of grants, and they were considered as implementers of central plans in the eyes of Planning Commission. However, as time has passed, we have realized that states had a substantial contribution to development because many subjects lay in the hands of states itself, and an over reliance on central funds have also politicized the process of development. In this context, there is one more structural shift that has been happening in the economy. India has shifted from being a highly planned and centralized state towards a more market oriented economy. In this context, a planning commission which holds the control over resources in the country and also which mandates the line of growth of the country in through the 5-year plans is no more relevant. So it is obsolete. In this broader context of economic change and also political ramifications due to the excessive power of Planning Commission, Government of India has taken a decision in 2015 to shift to Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog, as we know, is organizationally much more fluid than Planning Commission, which is very rigid in its nature. So Niti Aayog has become the official think tank of the country, right? So it is responsible for setting the goals of the nation and also laying the objectives for the future of the country. It does not have any powers over finances, and at the same time, organizationally, it is much more accommodative of states by involving chief ministers in the governing council and also in the regional councils. So far, we have discussed how Planning Commission has led to Niti Aayog based on some fundamental differences in operation with respect to federalism, with respect to finances, and also with respect to the larger structural shift that has occurred in the country's economy. In this context, let us try and examine the question. So, as I have pointed out yesterday, take introduction as an opportunity to jump into the answer directly. Right? Do not take too long to arrive into the main point of the question. So, how did I do it? So, as I've mentioned here, in 2015, India dismantled Planning Commission and replaced it with Niti Aayog. Here is when I enter the question directly. 6 decades of planning left few threads untouched, which are picked up by Niti Aayog. Here I am directly saying that Planning Commission has left us some untouched areas which are yet to be picked, and thus Niti Aayog has come into the picture. This introduction, I directly jump into the answer without much elaboration. So I say that the two bodies differ in the nature of work itself as follows. So inherently I am saying that the principles by which these two organizations work itself are fundamentally different. What are the principles and how Planning Commission worked and how Niti Aayog worked, right? So the principles with respect to Planning Commission and Niti Aayog are broadly compared. With respect to the approach to federalism, Planning Commission believed in a strong center, and thus it only involves union ministers and officials with no participation of states in the process of development and planning. However, Niti Aayog has evolved two principles of federalism. One is cooperative federalism and the other one is competitive federalism. In cooperative federalism, Niti Aayog has accommodated state governments through governing councils and also the regional councils, and at the same time it encouraged competitive federalism for the process of development. It believed that when two states are made to compete against each other, there will be a rapid change in the development scenario of the country. Thus, Niti Aayog has evolved several indices that compare states' performance in health, ease of doing business. We also know that there is water quality index, there is education quality index, right? So all these indices are developed by Niti Aayog with respect to the principle of competitive federalism. As we have just discussed, Planning Commission believed in a strong center. Thus, it had substantial control over the devolution of finances to states. However, as we have seen, Niti Aayog believed in a very broad structure of federalism which is based on cooperation and competition. Thus, Niti Aayog has no role in fund allocation to states and it is entirely in the hands of Finance Commission. Thus, there is no more political discretion in the hands of Niti Aayog to control the direction of development of various state governments. The next difference is with respect to the nature of planning. Whereas Planning Commission believed in a highly centralized narrative of planning, thus it always believed in the control of economy, in the control over economy, right? However, with respect to Niti Aayog, it believed that I cannot control the market entirely. I have to leave it to the market forces so that the resources of the country are more efficiently streamlined. Thus, it believed in a more participatory approach towards planning, which is more suitable to India's market economy currently. Government of India cannot control each and every resource that exists in the economy at the moment. It has to believe in markets and the power of markets to bring change and development, and that change in our attitude is reflected in the nature of working of Niti Aayog. Next is the nature of work, as you've just mentioned. Whereas Planning Commission has seen itself as a national planning organization, Niti Aayog only visualizes itself as a think tank. Thus, its role is broadly in setting the context of direction for the government of India and various state governments in India on how they have to approach with respect to a particular problem in the future. Next is the role in economy. Whereas Planning Commission has broadly, as you've just mentioned, had so much control over economy, thus it believed in managing government resources and allocating them. We have seen this over years, right, on how government of India has owned many PSUs despite their loss-making nature. However, Niti Aayog, the moment it has come into picture, it has believed in mobilizing and deploying private capital, particularly in a highly globalized economy that India is at the moment. So we have seen how Niti Aayog is playing a very instrumental role in privatization of public sector undertakings. It does have substantially covered the differences in principles of functioning of both these organizations. Now we can take a little more advantage of our understanding and deploy that to gain some additional marks, as I consider this as value addition. So, what am I mentioning here? I am mentioning the structural shifts that have necessitated this shift from Planning Commission to Niti Aayog. What were responsible for this change? So, this organizational change is necessitated by the structural shifts experienced by Indian economy, particularly in a rapidly shifting globalizing world. Niti Aayog's organizational structure also, which is based on accommodating states and subject matter experts, helped in bringing these goals to fruition. The goal here is not at all to mention the organizational structure of Niti Aayog. However, we are reflecting that we understand the Niti Aayog's organization. We know it. However, that is not asked. That is why we are using our understanding to say how the nature of organization of Niti Aayog has been instrumental in shifting the nature of planning in Indian economy. So far we have spoken about the principles which motivated the shift to Niti Aayog, and we have also cursorily touched the context in which this change was necessary. Now is the time to substantiate it. What do I mean by substantiating? Whenever we make an argument, we have to either give an example or a fact or a case study which proves that this shift was necessary. We do this by showing examples of what Niti Aayog has done so far over the last 5 years. We know that Niti Aayog has organized its chief ministers groups on several important issues like centrally sponsored schemes on Swachh Bharat, and at the same time it has played an instrumental role in proposing reforms like contract farming, data-driven governance like we seen with respect to SDG dashboard, and also reports like 3-year action agenda and strategy for New India. These are broadly in the nature of goal setting. It does not mandate anything. It just broadly sets the context in which India has to develop in the next few years. So we are saying again, what did I call this yesterday? It is called a connector statement. With a connector statement, I am saying above examples reflect a shift towards modern day governance. Thus, Niti Aayog has been playing a very important role in modernizing the nature of planning and working in India. However, certain issues persist. Why do we always talk about issues that persist? It adds depth to our answer. Rather than literally writing down the explicit parts of the question that are asked, we are also taking some leverage of the time and the number of words we have to examine the issue much more broadly. Now we are saying this is how Niti Aayog differs in principle, and this principle shift was necessary with this context, and in this applying these principles, Niti Aayog has done these works. However, it has been limited by certain things. So these are its limitations, and given these limitations, what are the proposals to make Niti Aayog much more effective? So this is the broader structure of question. It's just like you are arguing a point. So this is my point. These are the reasons for my point, And if not this, these are the repercussions. Thus, I propose this as a particular solution. So, this is the traditional structure of an argument, right? So, the same structure we are deploying here. So, the inability of Niti Aayog to enforce its ideas and the lack of powers in policy making, because it does not have any explicit roles in the ministries, and the absence of resources for plans are limiting the translation of Niti Aayog's vision into outcomes. This has not just been pointed out by us, even Vijay Kelkar has called for Niti Aayog 2.0, which asks for more powers to Niti Aayog in allocating transformational capital. So he says that Niti Aayog should have some powers to correct the imbalances between states, and this power to allocate fund, and this fund he refers to as transformational capital. And the Standing Committee on Finance also has recommended that Niti Aayog should be given some executive powers so that the changes which Niti Aayog proposes will take a more consolidated form. So, how do I conclude? I say that by including these changes, we will consolidate the directional shift that has been made with the creation of Niti Aayog. Okay, we have made some progress in creating Niti Aayog by replacing Planning Commission. However, this shift is much more relevant only if we add up some more powers to Niti Aayog so that it can translate its vision into outcomes. So, this is how we come to the end of today's episode. I hope you understood the nuances of answer writing. Yesterday, we have learnt one technique, that is explicit and implicit assumptions in the question. And today, we have learnt one more technique, that is deploying arguments so that we can substantiate our answer much more powerfully. With this, I would like to say goodbye, and let us take a moment to examine tomorrow's question. Get prepared and spend some time on understanding the topic. We'll catch up tomorrow. This question asks us specifically about the sources of industrial finance in India and how India can benefit from recent developments in international finance also. We know that industry contributes a very significant share to our GDP, right? And thus it is a huge responsibility on the part of governments to ensure that the industry is financed sufficiently well. This question has two parts to that. One is, what are the existing sources of financing our industries, and what are the new sources or the recent developments with respect to financing industries. So, recent developments. These are the explicit parts asked in the question. Before we meet tomorrow, I want you to identify what are the implicit assumptions in the question. First, and second, what arguments can you deploy to strengthen your opinion in this particular answer. So, with that, I would say goodbye. We'll catch up tomorrow. Please keep writing, please keep brainstorming, and share your opinions on the YouTube videos. Bye, guys. Take care. Please stay at home only and take care of yourselves and people around you. Bye bye.